oldest known Finnish food, that is around 6,000 years old, is fermented food. I will keep an intrigue for now because I'm planning to make a special video about it sometime soon. But it shows that fermented food was part of Nordic culture for centuries. The most famous Finnish fermented food is probably sourdough rye bread. No other nation has this much rye bread varieties and rye bread recipes as Finnish people do. Even though here you can buy a high quality sourdough rye bread in every supermarket, many households still keep a sourdough starter in the fridge and bake their own rye bread. I know a nice old lady who got sourdough starter as a wedding gift from her mother-in-law. And can you believe it? The starter was over 100 years old. It was kept in families through generations. But the sauerkraut history in Finland is relatively short. It has a simple explanation. And by the way, I have a video, you see it up there, in which I slightly touch the history of vegetable gardening in Finland. And for many reasons, mostly climatic, the main crop here were grains, and only 3 types of vegetables were grown, such as turnip, peas, and onions. Cabbage came to Finland around 16th, 17th century, and it was grown mostly in monasteries. But around 19th century, vegetables started to be heavily popularized in Finland. And as cabbage began to grow in local gardens, most likely Finns adopted the recipe from Russia. Sauerkraut is actually acknowledged and popular food here. It's been produced here by food industry, and they even have added a true Finnish touch to it, producing, for example, a sauerkraut with Nordic berries. And this is actually the recipe I'm going to share with you. Although I swapped cranberries for lingonberry, which is also very popular berry here in Finland, maybe even more popular than cranberries. And as for impact on sauerkraut, both lingonberry and cranberry have pretty much similar effect. So you can actually use whatever you have at hand right now, what you can easily find in your area. And of course, in this video, I will share tips that I inherited from my grandmother and tricks that some nice old ladies share with me. Because really, grannies know how to cook. Also, don't forget to check the description under this video, in which I give full instructions and exact proportions. So first, we need to prepare cabbage. And the first secret of good sauerkraut is the properties of the cabbage. It should be so-called winter cabbage, really late type of cabbage that is white in color and quite firm. Old ladies also said that it should be the cabbage that is grown locally. I have the one I grew in my garden, so I follow old ladies' instructions. We need to remove upper leaves, they are no good. And then again, remove another layer of leaves, but this time save them for later. The question is, should you or shouldn't you wash the cabbage? It is said that cabbage have this special lactobacteria on its surface. It really depends where you did get your cabbage from. If it's from a store or even local farmer, you probably should wash it. And if you grew it in your own garden and you grew it organically, probably you can skip the step. Okay, now you need to slice the cabbage. The best way to slice the cabbage is to thin strips, like you see I'm doing it. After that, place cabbage in some kind of a deep tray or baking dish or whatever. Add salt, and here in Finland we strictly use a sea salt. It's a coarse sea salt. And for every kilogram of cabbage you need around 20 grams of salt. I say around because tastes are different. Some really like it more salty and some less salty, and it's around 15 to 25 grams of salt per kilo. After we added salt, we need to give cabbage a good massage. And the cabbage should start to give a juice. And don't forget to stir the cabbage from time to time because coarse salt tends to be on the bottom and we need it to dissolve completely. So while you massaging your cabbage, stir it from time to time. The next thing we need is a carrot, and it's a 1 carrot per 1 head of cabbage. I don't really know the exact proportions because this is what my grandma told me. 1 carrot per head of cabbage. Peel and grate the carrot and add it to the cabbage. Then again stir it that the carrot spread evenly, and you can once again give a slight massage to carrots and cabbage. You can do it either with your hands or with a potato masher. Some do it with a potato masher, but I really prefer hands. And finally, we should add berries. It's better if berries are frozen because they won't fall apart when you stir it into the cabbage and while it's fermenting. Now I will tell you about the effect that berries has on a sauerkraut. Believe me, it's really amazing. It's not just about the taste. The famous Finnish berries such as cranberries and lingonberry contain a natural preservative called benzoic acid. Sometimes the fermentation process can go too intensely, and hence it happens when your room temperatures are above 20 degrees Celsius. And when this process is too intense, sauerkraut may turn dark and it starts to really smell bad. And this never happens if you add lingonberry or cranberry because of benzoic acid that regulates fermentation. And of course, with berries, sauerkraut taste remains really good and balanced. When our mix is ready, we should take a suitable sized jar. For example, my cabbage weight was around 3 kilos uncut and with upper leaves. So I take 3-liter jar. Place layers of cabbage, topping every layer with apple slices. And according to grandmas again, the apples should better be sour and once again local. 1-2 apples are enough. Apples is actually optional, but I made in apples as well, just because I still have them. The layers of cabbage should be placed in a jar really tightly, so compress them with your clean hand. And don't forget to put the leaves we saved on a jar bottom. I don't even know why we should place leaves on the bottom. I understand why we place them on top, but that's what my grandma always did. So when your jar is full, place the remaining leaves on top. And this time the purpose is really clear to me because we should put weight on the sauerkraut, and this large leaf prevents the weight from going down into the sauerkraut. And also you can put some kind of plastic lid to be sure your weight wouldn't sink into the sauerkraut. And in older times, people use wood, and as a weight, they were using rocks that could be found all around Finland in abundance. But today, I am using a smaller jar filled with water. As you can see, the smaller jar fits into larger jar without any effort. Also, don't forget to put some tray under your large jar with the sauerkraut, because during the fermentation process, the liquid tends to overflow from a jar. I also recommend to cover the jar with sauerkraut with some kind of a cloth, because flies really love sauerkraut. And at the same time, lactobacteria needs oxygen to keep this fermentation process going. So we can't just seal the jar with a lid. The ideal temperatures during which the fermentation process goes really well are around 18 degrees to 20 degrees of Celsius. After the first day, you will see bubbles rising to the surface every time you touch the sauerkraut and press the weight. At this point, you would need a wooden stick long enough to reach the very bottom of the jar. You need to impale sauerkraut with this stick few times in different locations. The carbon dioxide, a product of activity of bacteria, will escape and don't stay at the bottom of the jar. If you won't do this, it's bad for bacteria and bad for your sauerkraut. So don't forget to impale sauerkraut from time to time, every once in a while, at least once a day during this fermentation process. The most intense the process usually gets on the second day. By the end of the third day, usually things start to pacify. And actually, you can by the end of the third day, you can place the sauerkraut into the cold place. But I prefer to keep sauerkraut fermenting for another day or two. So usually this fermentation process is said to be 3 to 5 days. It's okay to keep it a little longer than 3 days. And once again, it depends on the temperatures in the room you're preparing your sauerkraut in. If you have those temperatures around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, it's okay to keep it longer. But if you have higher temperatures, I guess 3 days are enough. You can really notice when the process naturally starts to fade away. The first thing I do, I remove the weight from the sauerkraut, and then I seal the lid. And don't forget to wash the jar before you put it in the cold place, because the liquids overflew and the jar is quite dirty right now and it can cause molds. So really thoroughly wash your jar after you seal the lid, and then dry it with some cloth or paper towel. And then I take a jar and place it into the cold cellar that I have in my house. If you don't have a cellar or a basement or whatever, you can keep it in a fridge. But this is important. You cannot keep it in the warmth. Basically, sauerkraut is ready to eat after a week, counting the date when you started it. Taste is really only improves after you store it in a cool place for a while. And you should really try to make sauerkraut with Nordic berries and tell me in the comments how it turned out. If you are really into fermented food, here's the video I made last year, also using my grandma recipe, but this time it's not in any way a Nordic food. I think it came from a Caucasus because my grandma called it Georgian sauerkraut. And it's really spicy and hot, but yet it's still kind of a sauerkraut. So go watch this video too. Thank you for watching and see you next time on my channel.